picture this. The deadliest war humanity has ever seen, over 70 million lives lost, wasn't just set off by one dictator's wild ambitions. What if I told you it was actually powered by a mix of economic desperation, mega corporations funding the Nazis, and secret deals that split up Europe behind closed doors? Stick with me, because I'm about to reveal the real reasons behind World War II that your school books barely mention. Get ready. The truth is wild. Welcome, history fans. Today we're digging into the real story behind World War II, the stuff nobody told you in school. Most people think it all started because Hitler stormed into Poland in 1939, and that's that. Germany gets blamed, appeasement fails, and suddenly the world is at war. But hang on, it's not that simple. The real roots go way deeper. Economic chaos, secret money deals, and backroom alliances cooked up by the world's most powerful players. We're about to look at how the Treaty of Versailles didn't just end World War I. It basically set up the next one by wrecking Germany's economy. Then the Great Depression hit, and suddenly desperate people were willing to listen to anyone promising hope, even extremists. And here's the kicker. Big international banks and corporations, including some American ones, actually invested in Hitler's rise because they saw a chance to make a buck. We'll dig into secret deals that double-crossed countries, making invasion almost inevitable. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's all backed by real historical records, declassified files, and people who saw it happen. By the end, you might see World War II in a whole new light. So let's break it down together. Quick, clear, and straight to the point. Let's start with the money and misery that set the stage. Imagine Europe in 1919. The winners, Britain, France, and the US, meet in Versailles and lay down the law, determined to make Germany pay. But the Treaty of Versailles wasn't just about peace. It was economic punishment. Germany lost 13% of its land, including regions rich in resources such as Alsace-Lorraine and the Saar Basin. On top of that, they owed massive reparations, around $442 billion in today's money. Their military slashed down to almost nothing. No planes, no subs, barely an army left. But here's the wild part. The treaty was actually made to keep Germany weak for good. Economist John Maynard Keynes, who was at the table, called it a Carthaginian peace, basically saying it was so harsh another war was bound to happen. He was right. In the 1920s, Germany's money became worthless. People used wheelbarrows of cash just to buy a loaf of bread. By 1923, that bread cost 200 billion marks. Then boom, the Wall Street crash of 1929 hits and everything falls apart. Germany's economy, which relied on American loans, tanks overnight. Unemployment shoots up. Almost 1 in 3 Germans is out of work. Banks collapse. Savings disappear. People are starving in the streets while politicians argue and do nothing. So what happens when a proud nation gets humiliated and left broke? People get desperate, and desperate people turn to anyone who promises change. Enter Hitler and the Nazis, who offered jobs, pride, and payback. But here's the twist. In 1928, the Nazis were a tiny group with just 2.6% of the vote. So how did they suddenly take over? That's where the big money comes in. Keep watching. Next up, the business tycoons who threw their money behind Hitler. Let's get real. Hitler didn't just come to power with wild speeches and angry crowds. He had some seriously wealthy backers. In early 1933, the Nazi Party was flat broke and on the verge of shutting down. But then on February 20th, just weeks before a huge election, Hermann Göring throws a secret meeting at his palace in Berlin. Who shows up? Germany's richest industrialist, bosses from IG Farben, the chemical company behind Zyklon B, arms makers like Krupp, and more. Hitler gives them the pitch. Private business can't survive in a democracy, he says, and promises to smash unions and communists. The businessmen are sold. That night, they cough up 3 million Reichsmarks, enough to keep the Nazis afloat. IG Farben alone hands over 400,000 marks right away, then adds millions more later. Why do it? Simple. Profit. The Nazis promised big contracts for military buildup, which meant money in the bank. But it gets even crazier. There was international involvement too. The Bank for International Settlements, BIS, basically the world's central bank for central banks, helped move Nazi gold around. In 1939, just months before the war broke out, the Bank of England handed over £5.6 million in Czech gold to Hitler after the Munich Agreement, selling out an ally. And what about the American connection? Henry Ford, who was openly anti-Semitic, actually got medals from the Nazis and helped spread their propaganda. His factories in Germany built trucks for Hitler's army. General Motors Opel made vehicles for the invasions. Chase Bank froze Jewish accounts in France and handed them over to the Nazis. Alcoa supplied the aluminum for Nazi warplanes. IBM's punch card machines helped organize the Holocaust. These weren't just accidents. These were business deals made for profit, no matter the human cost. Historian Anthony Sutton found that Wall Street firms like J.P. Morgan helped refinance German debt, letting Hitler rearm in secret. Meanwhile, failing banks like Danit Bank, run by Jewish banker Jakob Goldschmidt, were blamed for everything. This blame game helped the Nazis win votes in the poorest areas. It's simple. When there's an economic crisis and someone to blame, fascists gain ground. Here's something to think about. If big business hadn't backed Hitler, would World War II have even happened? Let that question simmer as we dig into the secret pacts that made war inevitable. Now let's talk about the backroom deals that made invasion possible. You've probably heard of appeasement. Neville Chamberlain waving his peace in our time paper after Munich in 1938, basically handing the Sudetenland to Hitler. But behind the scenes, there were even more secret pacts. Let's rewind to the 1920s. Germany and the Soviet Union signed the Treaty of Rapallo in 1922, sneaking around the rules of Versailles. In secret, German soldiers trained in Russia and worked on tanks and planes. This deal with the devil lasted into the 1930s, letting both sides build up their armies in secret. Then comes the bombshell. On August 23, 1939, the Nazis and Soviets, who were supposed to hate each other, signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Publicly, it was a promise of 10 years of peace. But in secret, they agreed to carve up Eastern Europe. Poland would be split right down the middle. The Baltic states would go to the USSR, and Romania's Bessarabia too. Stalin had time to rearm. Hitler avoided fighting on two fronts. But alliances didn't stop there. Italy and Germany shook hands with the Pact of Steel in May 1939, promising to defend each other. Then in September 1940, the Tripartite Pact brought Germany, Italy, and Japan together as the Axis, with Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria joining later. Japan got to run wild in Asia, Germany, and Europe. These weren't just friendly agreements. They were plans to carve up the world. And here's the kicker. Without the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, Hitler might never have invaded Poland. Those secret clauses basically sold Poland out and triggered war declarations from Britain and France. So why keep everything hidden? To cover up the betrayal from the world and from their own citizens. With them, Stalin even purged his own officers, worried they'd find out. Meanwhile, Hitler kept pretending to hate communists while secretly making deals. Just think, how many lives could have been saved if these secret pacts had been exposed sooner? Let's pull the story together and talk about the major players. Adolf Hitler wasn't just hungry for power. He was fixated on getting more Lebensraum, more living space for Germany. At the time, Germany's farms were outdated, and there just wasn't enough land per farmer. Nothing like the wide open spaces in America. In fact, Hitler looked to the US and its brutal westward expansion, including the treatment of Native Americans, as his model for pushing east. Historian Adam Tooze, in his book The Wages of Destruction, says that Hitler's paranoia about running out of food pushed him to invade other countries. Ever heard of General Plan Ost? It was a horrifying blueprint for the Nazis to murder or remove 45 million Slavs and take their land for German farmers. Hitler sold this as destiny, but underneath it was all about resources. And Hitler didn't do it alone. Germany's old-school aristocrats like President Hindenburg made him chancellor in 1933 because they thought they could keep him on a leash. One of them even said, "We've hired him." But they were wrong. He ended up calling the shots. Bankers like Hjalmar Schacht helped get the economy ready for war, and arms makers like Gustav Krupp made a fortune off rearmament. And it wasn't just the Germans. Across the Channel, Britain's elite chose to appease Hitler because they were more afraid of communism than fascism. In the US, isolationists dragged their feet on helping out. And Stalin? He tried to buy time with a deal, but it blew up in his face when Hitler invaded the Soviet Union in 1941. None of these people were innocent bystanders. They were active participants blinded by greed, arrogance, or fear. So what really caused all this? It was a perfect storm. Economic collapse, big money backing the Nazis, and secret betrayals. Everything Hitler needed to seize his moment. So there you have it. The real story behind World War II. It wasn't just about Hitler's madness. The war was sparked by revenge after Versailles, desperation during the Great Depression, corporate money fueling the Nazis, and secret deals that changed borders with violence. Historians like Tooze and Sutton, plus evidence from the Nuremberg trials, show how money and backroom deals, not just hateful ideas, lit the fuse. So next time someone says it was just about Hitler, you'll know better. What surprised you most? The corporate money, the secret deals, or Hitler's obsession with land? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. If you learned something new, hit like, subscribe for more jaw-dropping history stories, and tap the bell so you don't miss out. Share this video to help others learn the real story. Thanks for hanging out with me, Legions. Stay curious.